Jackie, you want to give a little intro about yourself?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie Dudas. I've been with RPI for a little over 8 years now. Done quite a few performance and goal implementations, as well as GHR implementations and other modules within the GHR CloudSuite product. So if you guys don't have any questions, or if we're not waiting for anybody else, we could go right ahead and dive in.
Okay.
All right. So I did talk with Matt a little bit as I was prepping for this demo, and I heard wonderful things about you guys. So I'm excited to get to work with you, at least for this demo. And I wanted to preface the demo with the version I'm going to be showing you all. We have a CloudSuite sandbox. So it's a multi-tenant CloudSuite system that we use. It is the latest version, and I understand you all are on 11.01, but are looking to upgrade. So I took that into consideration and asked Matt which sandbox I should use. He said probably the latest one because you all are hopefully going to do an upgrade on the horizon. If that's not the case, just let me know, and I can let you know which pieces would not necessarily be available in the version you have now or the version you'll have when you choose to go live with performance and goals. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to use to kind of kick us off here and go back and forth. There's a lot of information in this PowerPoint, and I'm not going to read every line or slide, but I am going to provide this to you so that you all have this after the fact. So if I skip over some slides here, don't worry, I'm really trying to use the time we have allotted to show you the product as opposed to just a slide deck. So this is what we're going to run through today. I'd like to start with an overview of goals and then take you into our sandbox to do a little bit of goal creation in the system. Then we're going to jump over to performance. I'm going to do a performance overview, and then we're going to go into the system to do the performance appraisal process and then look at a little bit of the setup items there. So have you all had any experience or seen a demo or worked at all with the performance and goals modules to this point?
Yes, we have. Back in December, Ashley, Rose, and Matt did a very high-level overview, but we were just wanting a little bit more information.
Okay, absolutely. So feel free to tell me to move it along or skip something if something seems like a repeat. And then we won't take the whole 2 hours, so I do have time for questions at the end, but if you want to interrupt me and ask me a question along the way, that's perfectly fine too. All right, so the first piece is I'm going to take you through what kind of goals there are. So there are two different kind of types of goals. You can have organizational goals, which kind of sit at the organization unit level, or you can have resource goals, which actually sit on a person. And you can actually align those goals together. So I could align a resource goal with a broader organizational goal and really track from the top down or the bottom up what an organizational goal is and what other pieces are being used to achieve that goal. With organizational goals, you can do a couple of functions. You can do cascading goals, which is where you take a goal at a high level and cascade or push it down to lower organization units. Like I just mentioned, you can also align goals either from the top down or the bottom up. And then when you have goals that are cascaded or aligned, you can also use a function to push the results of that goal or the details down to the employees as well. And then when you create a goal, there are a few different roles within the goal world. There's the employee, the manager, the goal leader, and then an administrator. The employee can create goals for themselves. They can request goals. The manager can also create and suggest goals for employees. And then a goal leader has a lot of the same responsibilities as an administrator, but they are for a specific goal category. Goal category is used to, for lack of a better term, categorize a goal. And then the administrator, that's that God role, essentially. They can do pretty much all the functions within the application. So these are the main pieces that you have to set up when you're doing goal setup. There's organization configuration, some rules you have to come up with at the beginning for your organization. There's emails and templates. So along the way, part of the automated process also provides automated emails and notifications. So you would decide when you want those emails to be sent and what they would say. There's also types and categories. We'll get into this a little bit more when I take you into the system in just a few minutes here. But types and categories are two different ways to group or categorize a goal. There's a couple gotchas here with whoever you implement with, whether it's me or Matt or someone else. They'll help you kind of work through what a goal type would be versus a goal category. And then a goal year. So a goal year is used if you're using action plans, or if you have maybe the same goal every year. So every year you want to reduce turnover, but you want to rate yourself on it by year, and you want to show clearly when a goal starts and ends. You would use a goal year. And then action plan.
Can I ask a question about goals here? Because currently we have goals that are on fiscal year and on calendar year. Can we still do that?
So the goal year, when you create a goal year, you do specify that it is the current goal year. So we would have to look at it to see if you could have two kind of current goal years at the same time, because it sounds like you would want to have a fiscal year and a calendar year. So
the only thing that's not on a calendar year is the budget goals, the finance goals, which are typically organizational wide, if that helps.
Okay, so I'll have to take a look at that, and we'll see if we can get that to work for you. Okay. And then action plan templates, these are, an action plan is basically a user-defined set of steps to take action on to achieve a goal. So you can create some templates that can be used by the employees, and then they can also kind of create their own action plans as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump us into the system here, and you'll just have to bear with me because I'm using two different browsers as three different roles, so I might have to switch back and forth here. When I'm in with this blue and black setting, I'm going to be the employee, and when I'm in this kind of teal green, I'm going to be either the manager or the administrator. So I'll remind you each time we step through, but I apologize in advance if there's any confusion as we get in here. So as you know, since you're live on GHR, it's very role-based or space-based. So I'm in right now as the employee, and I can go up under Manage Goals, and I'm actually going to go ahead and create and request a goal as the employee. So it takes me to this Pending and Active tab here. I have a couple active goals already in the system. As delivered, the system wants the employee to request a new goal. A lot of clients choose to bypass the request process, and they just provide the employee the create goal function so that they don't have to have it approved by their manager. I know, some nurse managers, for example, might have like 200 direct reports. So they don't want to have the approvals back and forth there. So it's just up to you. It is an option to remove that approval or kind of streamline that process if necessary. So I'm going to put in a goal of reduce falls. I'm not sure if my types or categories are going to, actually I'm going to choose a specific type and category so that I can align the goal later, but it might not actually make sense for my goal title here. Put it under safety, and I'm going to put it under budget, so under category, so that I can align it with a goal I already have out there.
Jackie.
Yeah.
This is Mindy. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Why would the employees assign goals to themselves?
Why wouldn't they? I've always worked where employees created their own goals.
Oh, well, we've never done that before, so
that's common. Yeah,
we've never done that.
Yeah, but you might want to do like templates for like nursing, that typically happens is a nursing committee comes together and says, okay, these are the 5 quality goals we're going to work on. So they push them out, but nursing leadership or nursing, whoever, a nursing group says this is what all nursing goals will look like. And then individuals have always, every place I've ever worked, individuals have always created their own goals.
I would have just assumed that manager would assign the goals to their staff. Because you have specific goals that you want everybody to achieve within the department, so I figured it would be assigned at that level. I didn't think that employees, because maybe I don't assign safety, but you want me to. So,
well, then I can tell you to, but yeah.
Okay.
But can we create templates with this to push out?
For a goal?
No, just for the whole, like for a nursing assistant or a nurse to say, okay, nurses are going to work on, you know, a quality goal, a safety goal, a patient satisfaction goal. You know, they're going to have 5 common goals within a unit, based on what their leader has to accomplish. Can those be pushed out by the leader and not have to be approved?
Yes, the goal leader or administrator or the manager could push those down to employees.
Is it one by one, or is it a template we could create to say assign it with everybody with this job within this cost center?
It would be, so it wouldn't exactly be a template, it would be an actual goal, and then you would mass assign it. So it wouldn't be one by one, it would be like a mass action. Does that make sense?
So this is Brenda. I'm kind of piggybacking on what Mandy said. So if we set goals for the managers and they push it down to the employees, with the employees going in doing individual goals, I just see it as a departmental goal.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And then with us going with evaluations once every 3 years, how is this going to tie back to evaluation? So could we?
I'm sorry, I can't really hear, it's a little muffled.
Far back. Let me move over. So this is Brenda. What I was saying with goals, I understand what Jennifer's saying too, but if it's manager goals and they push it down to the employees, because this year we started with a policy change, employees will be evaluated once every 3 years. That's by the Joint Commission standards. So I'm just thinking, how are the goals going to tie in to this yearly?
Well, yearly, it'd just be leaders. That's
Leaders,
what Mike said.
Okay.
Yearly goals are leader. Every 3-year goal / performance appraisal, they'd be tied together then for all employees.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good point, because what we're looking at is if we've switched it that every employee, including all leaders, are only going to be evaluated every 3 years, but our CEO wants all leaders, which is ballpark 300 people, to still have goals they track and measure against on an annual basis.
Which I think that's good.
As long as we get out of limb.
Yeah, get out of limb, yes.
Not in our current process.
Okay, yeah,
That
so
make sense?
we can, yeah, we can definitely make that work.
So I would say, as implemented goals, since they would be just for leaders, we will probably push out certain goals, mass assign, like a common finance goal, but then it would be managers working with their managers to create their own goals. Because that's what they did anyway. They didn't use the templates.
Gotcha. All right, so the start and end date are already here for me because of the year that I've chosen. I can also assign a weight to this goal. So if I want to give this a weight in comparison to the other goals that I have, I can do that. The weight also ties into compensation calculations. So if you at any point want to roll your goal implementation in with your compensation, if you ever have incentive compensation, the weight would become important at that point. There's also a delivered progress bar here, which these statuses tie into the delivered goal report, but it's not super complex here, but just those 3 options. And then public, are you all using the take notes functionality today in GHR?
It's available. I'm not sure that managers are using it, but it is available to them.
Okay. I was going to just, this public function here is similar to the take notes public function. So if it's checked public, everybody can see it. If it's not public, only the employee and their manager can see it. But if it's public, that way other people can kind of look at a goal and say, oh, that's a good goal. I'd like that for myself as well, and kind of copy it down to themselves. And then, as delivered, the system has a description and an expected result. So I'm just going to put some brief text in here.
Does it spell check?
It does not. It
That's
should
good.
tell you, though, that something is spelled wrong like this. But I don't think that there is a spell check
Okay.
function in here. Yeah. This smart rating section down here, I almost always use Configuration Console to check all the boxes and hide this section. Because if you don't, and you don't check all these boxes, the system will tell you somewhere that a goal is highly unlikely to achieve. And it's depressing for someone who's just created a goal for the system to then tell you it's highly unlikely to achieve. I think when I save this and it gets approved, we might see later that it's highly likely to achieve because all of these buttons are checked. But really, I just like to tell clients, this means nothing. All it does is drives that likeliness to achieve message that shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm still in as the employee here. So when I save, I'll now have the ability to push it to my manager for approval. It's going to just take a second to load.
Well, before you move on, when we look up there at type, can we categorize those? Like we have 4 quadrants that we kind of put all of our goals under. So is that something that's configurable, or is that system delivered and we don't want to change it because we don't want to do a customization?
Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the type and the category are completely user-defined. So I put all of these types and categories in our test system, and your system will have no types or categories until you define them. So yeah, that can be exactly how you want it to be. All right, so now I have my submit draft goal to manager for approval action. I'm going to go ahead and submit it, and it might take a second here. And it says it's submitted, so let's see if it works. I'm going to come over here as the manager. And I should have a note.
A little slow because it's under my, we're using my GoToMeeting account, and I'm at a hotel where the internet's not going to be the prime speed.
No worries.
That could affect it.
You can pay the $19.95 and up it.
All right, so I'm now in as Rosalind Carter's manager, George Washington, and she's here under my staff, and here's that goal that I just created to reduce falls. So from this section, I could also suggest a new goal, or I can approve this goal that was requested by the employee. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it. And to come back here as the employee, under Manage Goals, I should be able to see that this has moved to the active section. Yep, there it is. So this down here was my pending goal section. If you remember, that's where I went ahead and requested it from the beginning. Now that it's approved, it's under my active goals section. I'm going to go in here and be able to edit the goal. So I now have an opportunity to put in, how far along am I with it? It'll let me type in here. Not 555%. 50%. I can give myself a rating on how I'm doing with it. Actually, now that I click this, oh, here we go. Okay. I was going to say, we might not have all the ratings set up.
Okay, so are those configurable, all the self-ratings, or are they systems? Okay.
Rating scales are defined by the user. So you all will be able to create your own rating scales. And so here's my smart rating, right? I'm highly likely to achieve it just based off of what I selected there. So you can see it's something that we might want to hide and not have out there for the employee.
Jackie?
Yes.
This is Kevin Jackson. Sorry I was late. This is, to me, and Jennifer, you correct me right or wrong, this is where our biggest difficulty comes in on the rating categories.
Yes.
So, for example, we usually use threshold, target, and outstanding.
And we could use those here, Kevin, because she said we could configure what we wanted our self-rating categories to be, correct?
Yep, these are just the ratings that I've defined here, but the rating scales you create, so it'll be whatever you want it to say.
So Kevin,
Okay.
we can influence this.
And just like you're doing with GHR now, you're using configuration console, so you're not truly customizing, so it affects upgrades. It's using that, and that's all easily updated.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just thinking out loud here. This may not be, but Jennifer, I know this is where me and you usually run into problems with this, is the capability, when you do break it up in that, is to have greater than a certain number and less than or equal to another number. Does it go to that level?
So, well, this is the self-rating part. I don't think she's gotten there yet, Kevin.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
But
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So let me tell you. So a large number of our goals are gonna potentially revolve around something with finance, or something with quality or patient satisfaction. And so what we do is currently what we do is we've got targets that you have to get between a range, and so it's a greater than, less than. We hate our rating scale right now, by the way. So it's our major pain point with our current system because it's so rigid. So we just want to have some flexibility with rating scales, because it is our number one complaint and number one pain point to get people to use the system. So if we have self-rating, is that one scale, and then does the manager rating scale look different? Or can it look
No,
different?
I believe as delivered, it's the same scale.
Okay. So in this case, like self-rating, to follow on Kevin, might be, it's threshold. What were they, Kevin? Threshold,
Target, and outstanding.
Yeah, so if we wanted those to be our 3 rating scales, we could. But then with target, what we've usually done, do we have to have a specific number, or can it be within a range? Do we get to define what target is, and is that defined in the goal itself rather than the rating scale?
Yeah, so I actually have, I have another client who has a similar request. They do the same target, threshold plus, and they call, I forget what they call it, not outstanding, but, and what we did for them is we configured this screen to, instead of just have the description and the expected result section, we had a target section, a threshold section, and then an outstanding section where they would actually define what those different levels would be. So we might use configuration console to do something like that for you, and then your rating scale would actually say, you know, where they fell into that range.
So
they need to plug their battery in.
Check that plug.
Yeah, and that sounds more what we're looking at. So, for example, here with the reduced falls by 20%, let's say 20% is target, and if you reduce them by 30% or greater, then you'd be outstanding. If you reduce them 10% to 20%, then you would fall in the threshold. Anything less would not count.
Right. Yeah, we could use configuration. Like what you're seeing here in our system, this is all the delivered stuff, but the performance and goals modules are very basic, and I think that's because Infor wants you to be able to use configuration console to make it your own. So we can absolutely explore different options like that.
Okay.
All right. So I could come under here and add a comment. So maybe I want to come in and say, you know, my progress on it, or why are you not letting me do this? Oh, I must have changed something on the first screen. So I could say, you know, progress is going well, whatever. I can add an attachment if I wanted to provide that as part of the update. The manager also has, we're still in as the employee, but the manager also has the capability to add comments to it. And I hit my back button.
Can some people use instead of doing an action plan, can people use the comments to provide updates each quarter?
Yes, you do not have to use an action plan. That's set up at the organization setup part. So if you do not want to do that, you do not have to. And if you just bear with me while it loads. The other piece that I wanted to show you is the aligned goals section. So if there was an organizational goal that fit in with the goal that I'm creating here for myself, I can align that goal right here. I picked the wrong goal category, but if I picked the right one, I could align them. Sorry about that. All right. So any questions from the employee perspective of the goal functionality?
So they can create their own goals, their leader can push and assign goals to them. What happens if the leader never goes in and approves and agrees to goals?
The administrator could do that for them.
But what happens? I mean, does that mean it just sits there in limbo? Can the person still do comments and updates and things? Does it just stay in an unapproved status from a report standpoint?
Would probably have to be monitored to see what's not approved and what's approved by someone.
Can we turn off that function?
I'm still not sure how it's going to work. If managers, they've got to do yearly goals, which I agree they need to.
It's like what we're doing now.
Right, but employees.
We'll push, I think
we need to wait on that.
Clinical employees, yeah, this is just for leaders rolling out.
Okay, but clinical employees,
We'll push it out.
we'll push it out because just take nursing, for example. How are they going to
They're not.
do their jobs as
But
it is?
like your team could create their own goals.
Yes.
They know. So I think it would be by areas to decide, probably by executives to decide.
Okay.
Like, do we want to use a template and we, so to speak, and we push it out? Or no, I'm going to let my leaders and I'm going to let my staff create their own. We used to just have big meetings and we would go do goal planning and then everybody goes out and does it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm sorry. I'm back.
So
Can you
my
hear me?
question was, yes, can we
Okay.
turn off the approved goals?
Yes, and that's what I was starting to say when I realized that I was not on the line anymore. But we can change this. Instead of it being request new goal, we can just make or have the option for the employee to create a new goal. Okay. So it would bypass that approval process. So I'm going to keep moving, but we will have time to come back to this, or if you think of any other questions, let me know. I'm going to jump toward the performance appraisal piece of it. So what we're going to go through today is I'm actually going to take you in as the administrator. We're going to create a performance appraisal. Then we're going to look at it as the employee. The employee can do their self-appraisal. There's also the manager does an appraisal, and then we have the option for an other rater or a peer appraisal as well. And when all three of those appraisals are created and filled out, those combine into what's called a consolidated appraisal that's viewable in a PDF. You do not have to have the self-appraisal piece. So if you don't require a self-appraisal, or if you don't even offer a self-appraisal, we can turn that off within the system. So probably the best way to do this is just to take you in and show you a little bit, and then we can come back to some of these org level and form level setup decisions and setup pieces here. So let me jump in. Let me figure out which browser I need to be on. Go in as the administrator.
As you're doing this, can we have goals without doing a performance appraisal document?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And while we're on that note, real quickly, the employee, I'm already there. The employee can always view their goals under their profile, and the manager can always view the employee's goals as well. When you're in under the employee profile, I'm sure you are used to the view that's trying to load here, but on the left-hand side, you'll have a goals tab, and the employee can click in there, view their goals, manage their goals, rate their goals, and the manager has the same access to. So you do not need the performance appraisal to use the goal system. They are two different modules, so they're often named as one and the same.
Okay.
So here's our new goal that we just created. All right, jumping back here. So I'm going to create the appraisal here. I'm doing a function to create it just by a resource, but there's also a function to create by a group of people via an eligibility group. So if you have a form for your managers that's different from the form for your staff, or maybe your C-level has a different form, we can separate that out and mass assign it by that appraisal group. So for me, I'm just doing it by the resource. I'm creating one for Rosalind right now. So I'm going to go ahead and create this. I don't need to fill anything else out. This is all defaulted in from the form itself. And then once I hit submit, I can, where's my appraisal maintenance? I can go in and view it on the active tab. There's my appraisal for the employee. I'm going to jump over to other browser, back to the employee, take them home for a second. And up under my reviews, I should see the newly created appraisal for myself. I should see it. I might have an old one hanging out here from when I was just prepping for this demo, so let's see. Let me delete this.
So, and then if we don't, if we've moved to an appraisal every 3 years, so if we if we go with this and we set it up, we can set it up to reoccur every 3 years on the employee's hire date with reminders sent to the employee and the manager, like 90 days ahead of time.
Yeah, however we want.
Right. What you do though, and we'll get into this. What you do, you create appraisal forms. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're just being silly.
They're cutting up.
So
you're breaking up on the phone.
You create appraisal forms by appraisal period. So you would create one every 3 years essentially, and then assign it to people. And we'll look at that a little bit when we get into the actual appraisal setup.
Jennifer, at the time we hire someone, we'll set their anniversary date 3 years from that.
Oh, y'all started doing that?
Well, we haven't yet, but we can massively do it.
Okay.
So we just haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. I hadn't fully deleted it from before, so it didn't create a whole new one. So this is what the employee will see when they come in. And even though I just created it, you can see it's already at 33%. And the reason behind that is I actually have an appraisal goal section in here where you can create future goals as part of the appraisal, but it's not a required section, and it amounts to 33% of the form. So because it's not required, it looks like this employee already has done 33% of it. So a little confusing, but basically if they choose to not do that section, they already have a 33% leg up on the appraisal. So I can click Start Appraisal here as the employee. And the first thing that I'm going to do, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot this piece. I just looked down at my notes. I'm going to request an other rater. So the employee has the, can you open here for me? The employee has the option to request other raters. You can turn that off if you're worried the employee's just going to select all their best friends who they know will rate them well.
And that's we need it, because
we had that before.
Optional.
Yeah,
We make those decisions as a company when we go into this.
because there may be from a clinical, non-clinical leadership that we need to have that done, but that needs to be a organization decision, not an individual.
Sure. And the way that the system is delivered is the manager has to approve the other rater requests. So you still do have that piece in there where I'm the employee, I'm selecting that Abigail Adams is going to be my other rater. As a peer rater, submit it. My manager still has to approve it before it becomes final. So there is that as well. I'm going to jump us back to my reviews and hit Start Appraisal again. So there's different sections that make up a performance appraisal. Each one of these on the left, each one of these panels on the left-hand side is kind of like a section. And you can choose to have different sections, not these sections. You can have other sections. There's a lot of configuration that is generally used in performance too, so we can kind of make this your own and make it look how you want it to look. My first section here is the mission, vision, and value section. So this is a newer feature where it's, I can check and select that I've read and understand our values, kind of like just signing off on this process. As I hit next, this section is called People Leadership, and let it load here. So it's actually, there's a few different options you can have for performance appraisal criteria. The first one is position responsibilities. So anything that you've defined as a codable, selectable responsibility at the position level, you can choose for that to appear on a performance appraisal. You also have competency models that you can select and choose to appear as criteria on a performance appraisal. And lastly, you have user-defined criteria, which consists of yes or no questions, long text responses, and multiple choice questions. The rating scale also pulls in here. So this right here is a rating scale that I'm using as part of this question. I'm going to kind of breeze through here and just fill a few things out. In some cases, if you wanted to force, I don't have comments under these questions, but if I did and I wanted to force a comment if I gave a certain rating, so if I said not meeting expectations and I wanted to force whoever was filling this appraisal out to put in a comment around that response, I could do that. It's by rating level. Screen's a little jumpy here. Hopefully I got all these jumping around a little bit. So everything under my people leadership section, I think those were my user-defined criteria. I must have picked a person that doesn't have any position responsibility set on them, so it would appear similar to the people leadership section. I'll have to double check. I thought she did have some responsibilities. And then under the evaluate goals section, it's going to pull in any goals that have dates on them that match my performance appraisal dates. So the goal that we created before, the reduce falls goal, that's right in here. We can come in here, open up any of these goals, and we can rate them. We can rate them, we can view them. The manager has the same ability. So again, just coming in here, using this rating scale that you define. Hit save. You also have an option to complete the goal. So if this is kind of the end of your year and you're doing the performance appraisal and at the same time you're going through and making all your goals complete, you have that option here as well. And the back should work to take me right back to the form. I think it's shy. Everybody's watching it. I went ahead and jumped right back to my appraisal, so I thought that might be faster. I'm going to go back to continue appraisal.
Okay, can I ask, where'd it go? So they kind of changed.
Sure, what are you looking for?
It wasn't values, it was what evaluate, okay. So people, leadership, and position responsibility, where is the information there housed that it pulls from? Is it tied to the job code or is it tied to the person?
So it depends on what kind of criteria you're using. Under people leadership, this is user-defined criteria, and that's tied to the performance appraisal itself.
So
Under
that's
position
responsibility. What is it? So people leadership is the same for every person?
This is all user-defined. This is how they built it, but we created how we want it.
I know, but I'm saying, is it defined for like all leaders would have this same thing? Or, I mean, I don't want to get in there to find 8,000 role people leadership. I mean, that'd be horrible to try to maintain. So this people leadership, could this be common for all leaders or common for all roles? How do you define this so that you're not defining it per employee?
It's by form. So if you don't assign all your employees the same form, they won't all have the same criteria. So if you have a leadership form.
Okay. No, go ahead. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, so if you have a leadership form, you would have your leadership criteria on your leadership form. If you had a staff form, you would just have your staff criteria on your staff form, and so on. So the user-defined criteria is by form. And then the position responsibility, that is pulled from the employee's position responsibilities, like the actual codable responsibilities that live on a position. So if you had a position responsibility section on one form, that section would look different for each person that had a different position.
So is that where, if we wanted to integrate competencies, is that where they would go into the position responsibilities?
No, that would actually be an additional section. So competencies is another thing you can use to rate people on, and competencies would be another section. And that would be, obviously that would be, excuse me, housed in competencies, but then you attach the competency model to the performance appraisal. So that kind of functions like the user-defined criteria in that it's by performance appraisal.
Do you have an example that you can show us on the competencies, what that would look like?
It would look similar to this. Like, it would be, these might be competencies.
Then the criteria?
Yes, exactly.
So you said competencies would be housed in another module. Does that mean we have to buy something else?
No, competencies are part of, sorry, is someone saying something?
Yeah, they're saying competencies are part of global HR?
Yeah,
Have we just
so
set it
competencies
up?
get set up under qualifications, so you already own all that.
So do we have to buy a competency model and competency descriptions, or does that come with, y'all already have one, like Lominger or something like that?
We don't have one. I believe you could purchase one if you didn't have one in-house.
We wouldn't, we go buy one. It'd be cheaper and then more time, it'd be way too time, and not how do we know our competencies are valid? You could buy that, Brenda, and they'd be valid, if I could argue with them. Okay, so we have all that, we just would have to build it.
Correct. So the employee, like, let me jump back in here, and the employee can just go through and, you know, make comments and ratings for each section. I'm going to go ahead and rate each one of these goals. And the different sections within a performance appraisal can also be weighted, and that helps calculate the score of the performance appraisal. So if the goal section is worth 40%,
Okay. back button really doesn't want to work for me.
So are we still in what all the stuff the employee is doing?
Yes, we're still with the employee.
Okay.
I'm getting ready to switch us over to the manager in just a minute here. I was going to try to get this to 100%, but we can actually go in as the manager next. And I just clicked this appraisal button right here, which creates a PDF for the employee to view. So it should pop one open right here. This is the delivered appraisal in PDF version. This is just the employee appraisal. Obviously, we haven't done the manager or other rater ratings yet. There's an employee section. We can add or remove values from here. The mission, vision, and values section, and then the different actual criteria sections.
I think they're exceptional.
I will jump us over to the manager now. Who am I in as here? It's the administrator. And the manager should actually be, from Rosalind selecting a other rater, I should have a notification under here for that. All right, there's her request. I think it should open here. There we go. And I can view that she's selected Abigail Adams to be her peer rater. I can add others if I want. I can approve it, return it, come back to it after I've saved it as a draft. I'm going to go ahead and hit approve. And the following action has completed successfully. So then, as the manager, I have a few different ways of looking at my performance appraisal. I can go in under my staff and go from person to person and go to their performance tab and look at their appraisal. I also can go to the review performance section right here, which will be kind of like my dashboard of appraisals. So these are my 3 direct reports. If I go to all assigned to me, this will kind of clump it all together in one section. I'm going to go to Rosalind's and go ahead and do start appraisal. So there are ways to choose which sections appear for the manager and for the employee. So if you don't want the other rater too. So if you don't want the same sections to appear for any of those types of raters, you can select them out so that they're not the same. But otherwise, the form will appear just the same. And I think one thing we didn't hit under under the last appraisal was setting goals. So under set goals, you can create a future goal or a goal. It could be a current goal too, but basically a goal that hasn't already been created out there. The same kind of goal form that we saw before, where again, we can make any modifications that we need to it, but you would go in and, oops, I don't have a type of test. Go in and create your goal, select your type, select your category.
Did those default to be in check unless you're going to create one from scratch at the bottom?
No, but we can use Configuration Console to check them and hide them if you would prefer that. Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill out a couple of these. I won't take all the time to get us all the way through the process, but I'm going to fill out a couple because I want to show you the consolidated appraisal. I'm going to hit Save and Close. And the consolidated appraisal, if you remember from the PowerPoint, it's when all three kind of come together. Right now, we just have the manager appraisal because we haven't finalized the self-appraisal yet. But I want to show you it first, and then if we can get to that point later, we can look at it with all three of those results together in there. So again, it's a PDF. It has the same section at the top. It also this time tells me the appraisal owner name, which in this case is the manager, but I'll show you a reassign function that we can do with the appraisal as well. The mission, the sections, so it didn't save all of my, I think I only selected a couple, but here's some of the ones where it saved my responses. The other ones are just blank. It also shows calculations. And then there's a section at the bottom for ratings with a bar graph. So it shows the manager, the self rating, and the other rater. Because we haven't done the other rater yet, and because we haven't finalized the self, they're not in there. But the manager piece is here so far. And then it shows you a little bit on how to calculate the score. My overall score right now is not so great, but that's just because I haven't really filled out all the sections yet. As you can imagine, once we fill that out, we'll get beefed up a little bit better.
Makes for a really nice overall document.
Do you all use other raters or peer raters?
No, not today.
No, but we could. We would have the need because, like, we have non-clinical people supervising clinical people, and from a joint commission standpoint, clinical has to have an input in their appraisal, so we might do it that way.
Okay.
There could be where somebody is supporting two leaders. I mean, I don't think it would be common. So I would, but we would have a small need for it, I think.
Okay.
And we're not a magnet hospital, so we don't have to have that peer review function that magnet hospitals do for nursing.
Okay. So the manager, we saw the employee request other raters. The manager can also request peer feedback. So I've just right-clicked on the appraisal here. The manager can go in and select a resource, select the rater type.
Yeah. So could we configure it so that only the manager can request the other feedback, not the individual?
Yes, we can definitely do that. And then now that I've, I'm sorry?
Let me ask you one quick question. Is it only one person, or can they request feedback from multiple other raters?
No, it's multiple. I don't know that there's a limit. It might be like 99 or something. So yeah, you have, but the unfortunate thing from the manager point of view, the way the form is delivered, the manager would have to do it one by one. If you remember, oops, I clicked the wrong thing. If you remember the employee had like a list that they could choose from, but the manager gets this kind of one by one thing. So we might be able to configure a way to make a list like the employee sees. Otherwise, if this is not so much of an issue, the manager just selects it one by one. If I double click this appraisal, it's going to take me to a kind of a different view of it. It's going to take me to what I call the performance profile. So it's showing For this specific performance appraisal, it's showing all of the other raters that are associated with it, where everyone is in the process, if they've started it, if it's still in draft, which means they haven't touched it yet. We also have a section for our values. So this is just the mission section from before. We also have attachments. So if there was any kind of attachment that you wanted to include to bolster the performance appraisal. The take notes section also pulls in here. So if you were taking notes throughout the year on good or bad things that an employee was doing, you could reference that here and include it in your performance appraisal. There's also a direct link to the self.
Let me ask you,
I'm sorry?
okay, who can see the take notes?
So it depends on whether the note has, sorry?
No, okay, go ahead.
It depends on whether the note has been made public or not. If a note is public, the manager can see it. Or, well, let me start this way. If an employee takes the note themselves and they check the public checkbox, the manager can see it. If the manager takes a note on the employee and selects the public checkbox, the employee and their upline manager can see it. If that public checkbox is not checked, the only person that can see the note is the person who made it, whether it's the employee or the manager. And in all cases, HR can always see it. So HR could always go find that information.
And Jennifer, that's why we opted to not push that out as for everybody to know that it was available, because Brenda was quite hesitant about what a manager could say about an employee and accidentally hit the public button and make it public to that
Couldn't
employee.
you just undo the ability to make it public?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can do that, but we opted not to push out any of the tech notes at this point.
Okay, because I always use the tech notes instead of a file folder, because I forget.
All right, and then there's a direct link to the self-appraisal and other rater appraisals, but they're also available down here too, so it's a little bit duplicative. I have also, for clients, used Configuration Console to add in links to the Employee Relations module. So if you want a direct link to see what coaching, grievance, or disciplinary actions are out there for an employee or a manager, you could link there as well. If you can think of any other links that you would want to put out here, for another client, I've linked them to a video that shows them how to walk through the performance appraisal. So if you can dream it, we can probably do it. All right. The manager can also reassign the appraisal. So if, for example, I used to report to Jeff, but recently I was transferred to another manager, but really Jeff should do my performance appraisal because I've spent a lot more time with him, the manager or the administrator can choose to reassign the appraisal. So I'm going to go ahead and reassign this appraisal as the manager to somebody else and hit submit. And you should see now under the appraisal owner, there's a new owner for the appraisal. Even though I'm still Rosalind's manager, this appraisal is actually owned by somebody else. So for them, it'll appear under their all appraisals assigned to me, and they'll be able to fill out this appraisal as if they were the manager. If I need to take it back, I can reassign the appraisal again and click assign to me, and I can steal it back. I see this function used for the example like I just said, where it's truly someone else should be filling out the appraisal because they do more with the employee, or if there's kind of two managers that want to provide their feedback and we don't want to use the other rater functionality. They can kind of pass the form back and forth to each other. However, it will only be stamped with one section of a response. So they'd have to, there wouldn't be two manager response sections. It would be kind of one group manager response section. And whoever the appraisal owner is at the end would be the person whose name is on it at the end. So just something to keep in mind here.
So if there's a reorg and the leader moves to another area, from a system standpoint, are there, so when we reconfigure in terms of direct reports, the performance appraisals automatically go to the new leader, or do they stay with the old leader till we manually move them?
It depends on one little setup piece. Under, let me get there so I can show you. Under the performance organization configuration, there is a checkbox for for automatic or automated automate appraisal reassignment. So if this box is checked, it will follow the new manager. If this is not checked, the appraisal reassignment will not be automated.
Okay, it doesn't in Liam, that's why I was asking. It doesn't add anybody.
Just let Liam go away.
I know.
All right, and I think that actually kind of segues, I'm looking at my notes here, I think that's where we were headed next, under the administrator, to look at the performance appraisals from an appraisal maintenance perspective. There's different statuses that an appraisal can be in. Preliminary is prior to it being pushed out and available to employees. It's just kind of maybe you've created them and you want to make sure that the appraisals look correct and all the right people got the appraisals and the managers are set correctly. After you do this, you can go back under appraisal creation and do the make appraisals available action. This will make them active. And if you have email automation set up, it will go ahead and send a notification to the managers and employees that their appraisals are available. From here, I can see any active appraisals. So these are all in progress or in draft. Once an appraisal is completed or filled out to 100%, the employee and the manager can finalize the appraisal. Shoot, we don't have anything under our finalize tab. If we have time at the end, I'll finalize some of these and we can push them through. But finalized means that for the employee, if you do the individual or the self-rater appraisal, when you finalize it, it actually jumps all the way to historical because it's complete at that point. From the manager finalizes it, and their next step is then to send it to the employee for acknowledgement. The employee can acknowledge the appraisal. Sometimes we put verbiage in there to say, I don't agree with this, but I'm acknowledging it, and it's basically their sign off on the form. At that point, it then moves to the historical process. So these are our four statuses.
How do we do it? Because this is Brenda, I don't like sending appraisals electronic to the employee without the manager being present going over it. Because it's so impersonal doing that.
Let me try to get this appraisal completed and then we can walk through those steps. I'm just worried it might give me an issue with that position responsibility section. Let me choose another employee. The system, when you do it, it asks for you to select a meeting date, which doesn't really drive a lot. It just records in the system a date that you've met, that you plan to meet with, or that you've met with the employee, but it kind of encourages the employee and the manager to get together and discuss the appraisal. So when the manager hits finalize as delivered, the employee will be able to see the manager's responses, but they won't get a notification unless the manager wants them to. The manager can choose to send them a notification that their appraisal is complete. And if they don't finalize it, the employee won't be able to see it, and we could at that point wait until they've had the conversation before they finalize it. Some organizations do like the employees to see it so that it gives them a chance to prepare for the conversation that they're about to have. So it just really depends how you want to work that. There is some flexibility.
Okay, so that can be in the process with building and that.
Yep, exactly. So at this, I am in as the admin at this point, but I'm going to just walk you through the appraisal, the finalize process. So once I hit finalize, this is where it's asking me for that meeting date. So we can always change this date later too. So I'm going to hit submit. It's going to leave my active tab and go to my finalize tab. From here, I now have the option to update the meeting date or submit it to the employee for review. I'm going to stay on my finalize tab, but change to submit for acknowledgement. And actually, I will do that with this appraisal so that we can follow it through with good old Rosalind. trying to get to 100% here. So you can't you can't finalize an appraisal until it is at 100%. And sometimes something happened where it didn't save everything. Sometimes managers think they've gone through all the questions, kind of like what I'm doing right now, right? Like I thought I hit all the questions, but I clearly missed something somewhere. So just trying to go through and make sure I've figured everything out.
So is everything on there required? Like
Yeah.
even comments? Okay, so if we put it on there, we need to know it's required.
Not necessarily the comments. Everything that is like a criteria section is required, but the comments are not required. If I'm in a section, it will tell me that something is required if I tried to leave it, but I can close the appraisal and come back to it if I need to. All right, let me just do this one more time, make sure that it lets me out of here. There's still a problem here with me getting this one to 100.
So I have a question. So I'm the employee, I complete my self-appraisal. Then Kevin completes my appraisal in the system. I don't have another rater. So those two appraisals merge together and we agree and accept. Do I have to do anything else in the system? Like I don't have to go back and say approve and submit. I don't have to click a bunch of, I don't want to have to go back in a bunch of times back and forth within the system, either from a leader standpoint or the user standpoint.
Sorry, you as the employee or you as the manager?
Both, because I got to be both roles. So I'm thinking about me as the employee now, and Kevin's my leader. And so I do my self-appraisal. He does his appraisal. They merge into one document. We meet, and I agree with his rating. Are we done? How do we go back in the system? Do we have to, is there a functionality that talks about meets and agrees or anything? How do we know from a standpoint? Okay.
That's what I was trying to show you, that I'm kind of struggling with getting this to 100%, and I'm trying to see if
the same document.
It did. Didn't you see that long document?
Merge into one document.
It merges in, remember you got the 3 to 3 and it merges, her little graphic? It merges into one document. So there's so much to it.
So what if you think you're a 3 and he thinks
I
you're
know, that's
a
why I
1?
was
They're not going to
going.
merge.
So what, no, they're going to merge anyway.
But what are you going to get?
I know, yeah. So what happens if we agree? If I agree with my leader's appraisal and I don't agree with my leader's appraisal, what do we have to do from a system standpoint to be able to document that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's let me try to get this. I think I've discovered what the issue is. I hope I did. But that's the acknowledge functionality. So once the appraisal is finalized, the manager can submit it to the employee to acknowledge. And whether they agree with it or not, part of the system requirement is to have it be acknowledged. So that's the piece. And then as the system is delivered, after the employee acknowledges it, there's one more piece where the manager has to acknowledge their acknowledgement. I often see that piece get taken off. Clients ask for that to not. Right, yeah. Clients often ask for that to get turned off.
Yeah, so if I'm not happy with my performance review and I refuse to acknowledge it, can I, as the manager, go in and say, Polly Weiss refused to accept whatever? Can I override her refusal?
Yes, the acknowledgement can happen by the administrator.
So my other question, and this is, we had PeopleSoft at my last company, and we had to do so many steps to close it, it was ridiculous. So what happens if we never close it out? Is it just hanging out there? Like if I don't agree, if we don't do all the little steps that we set up, does it just look like it's never been delivered?
We just don't do self-evaluations. We just do manager evaluation. That was.
Yeah, it'll just.
That will fix everything. Don't do self-evaluations, just do manager evaluations.
I would do.
So I'm sorry, what was the question?
So my question, Brenda's just not gonna do self-evaluations at all. She's gonna solve my problem that way.
Manager evaluation.
So that's actually a good question. Do we have to turn on the self-evaluation function for every form?
No.
Okay, so then that would
We
solve
just
that
don't
one.
do self-evaluation.
But let's just suppose for some reason we don't acknowledge all the steps that are set up. Does that mean that this evaluation just lingers on out there, it's open?
Yes, it would still be sitting out there as an active form. So the manager can close it out and do the acknowledgement step either on behalf of the employee, or they can cancel or bypass the acknowledgement so that it doesn't actually require the employee acknowledgement. But
Yes,
the acknowledgement step.
We're going to have some kind of acknowledgement, because when these regulatory agencies come in, that's what they look for, is the acknowledgement or a signature, which
Exactly.
this is going to be electronic. So there's going to have to be some kind of acknowledgement.
Exactly, yeah.
But we could turn off the self, which I would do for
Yes.
employees. That'd be, no.
Yeah, turn it off.
That would be the main thing. We just need, because otherwise we're just gonna have all these we're gonna have these open documents. The employees need to do as little as possible in there.
Here's my personality coming out with that.
See?
Yeah. That's what Brian Pierce told me. I was a D and I.
That's what I am. I'm a DI. I recognize
So
my
I just
fellow.
I just switched to another employee because I couldn't get the employee we were working on for whatever reason. I missed something on their appraisal. But if you remember, I went ahead and finalized Timothy Andrews' appraisal, and I submitted it to them for acknowledgement. This is what the employee sees under their performance appraisal section, under the acknowledge piece. They have the appraisal here, and they can go in and acknowledge it. And they have comments that they can put in and say, I disagree, or we met, or I agree, whatever they want to say, and then submit. And then once they do that, it disappears off the Acknowledge tab and goes to the Historical tab, and will live here forever. They can always view it. The manager can also always view it on that employee's Performance Appraisal Historical tab, too.
Okay. So is there anywhere in there that would indicate so we would have the date that they had the meeting? Because I'm just thinking when they, well, no, I didn't have it. Yes, you did. You met on
That
that
would
day.
be our acknowledgement there with the date. So.
Yeah. So whatever day the manager signs it needs to be the date that it was done. And they're waiting for acknowledgement that it was done. They can't wait. They need to
They
be
do
like
it
in
together,
Reno.
like you said, and
They
the
do.
manager and the employee can acknowledge it at the same day.
Yeah.
Right.
Make them, and if they disagree, just have a little comment that they disagree.
Because they do that now.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So they
then
have
the acknowledgement lives in the appraisal PDF. So you can see that the comments that I just made are now being pulled into the acknowledgement comments here on the consolidated appraisal. So it gets saved as part of that history too.
And then I can sit there as the manager and print that off and give it to them, and they walk away with it, right?
Correct. They also have access to it themselves, so you wouldn't have to give it to them. It's on their profile. They could go find it at any point.
Show it to everybody.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'm getting logged back in. I had to do a little juggling here to show you that acknowledgement. So give me a second to get logged back in so that I can show you some of the form setup for the appraisal. Okay, So under administrator, under setup, there's a few performance options that have to be created. And then also, when this loads, we'll go in and look at the form itself. So under organization configuration, this is where you decide some things like we just talked about the automatic appraisal reassignment. So if the form should follow the manager as the employee is transferred. Come on. Internet Explorer is not the most supported browser for this application, but I had to use it.
Chrome?
It is better on Chrome, but I had to use both Chrome and Internet Explorer so I could be logged in as two different people. So.
Phil, do you hear that?
We are going to find it. We're going
Alicia?
Join.
So this is also where you specify weights, the way that the calculations happen. Do the section weights for all the forms have to equal 100%? There's also email automation rules here. So when each one of these...
We can choose which ones. We can choose which ones to turn on?
Yes, exactly. And you have, for each one of these actions that appears here, you choose whether you want to send an email or not and what the email template is, or you could just send a notification. If you just send a notification, that kind of appears in the employees like in basket, kind of like those rules that you were just seeing me send for like requesting the other rater appraisal, just shows up in their in basket, just letting them know so they don't get an email to their email inbox. But yeah, so you would decide all of these rules here, whether you want them to get that or not. And then next step instructions. So when the appraisal is in each one of these statuses, you can have a little bit of text explaining what the next step is. So for each person, for the self, when it's in draft status, what should they do next? When it's in progress status, what should they do next? And so on. Same thing for the manager down here as well.
Do we have to have all those statuses?
These are delivered statuses. Yep, this is the way that the appraisal flows.
Okay.
But if we wanted to skip like that piece where I said that when the manager has to like do the double acknowledgement, we would just kind of skip that.
Okay, so we can skip some of them.
Then here's a section. This is actually a very new section with one of the most recent updates that explains how the calculation works. There's no options to set up on this section, but it's just good to know here how the calculation works. So, and then if you all are using GHR today, so you should be kind of familiar with the email templates that you can create, but it functions the same in the performance module. You have the variables that you can select and choose from so that you can use the same template for multiple different types of people in the organization. Rater types, this is where you would specify who an other rater is. Are they an alternate manager? Is it a peer? Just a catch-all of other? And then you define these, and you also specify on which forms they're used. And then this appraisal criteria section is where you create that user-defined appraisal criteria. So each one of these items here is a piece of criteria, and you can see I've also specified a different response type. So these couple have a rating scale. This one is a long text response. These are just yes or no's. So a few different options here. And then once you have your criteria created, I'll go ahead and open one of these just so you can see what it looks like. So this is what actually appears on the form for them to fill out or respond to, whereas this is the title and then this is the response type. And then once you have the criteria created, you then put it in a criteria group. And the criteria group is what you attach to an appraisal criteria section. Work for me here.
And that's what you were saying, we could define what those are.
Exactly. Yep. These are all up to you. All right. That's it under the administrator setup. There is another performance section where we actually would go to create the sections and the forms. So if I click appraisal forms, it's going to take me to a 2-tab section where I have my sections and my forms. I'll take you into the forms first. Essentially, you need to create sections that you can then attach to a form. The form is where we have all of our rules around the appraisal. When does it occur? Who gets the appraisal? So we attach the eligibility group here. Are other raters allowed? Do we want a self-appraisal? I don't want to throw too much information at you until you have something to look at, so let's give it a second to load. Okay, so here's my form. This is the eligibility group that I have tied to it. So only these people, if I create it by eligibility group, only these people will get the form. Then there's some rules. Do I want the managers to be able to create appraisals, or do I want to control that under the performance administration so that only the administrator can create it? Am I allowing a self-appraisal? Am I allowing other rater appraisals? Who can my other raters be? What types can they be? For the self-appraisal, is it available to the manager as the employee is filling it out, or is it only available after the employee finalizes the appraisal? Does it have to be done before the manager even starts theirs? Same kind of rules with other raters. Can the resource request other raters? Does the other rater have to be done before the manager starts it? Is it available when the manager is filling it out? And then do we want to know who those people were in the consolidated forms and on the list? This is that appraisal text that we just saw under the organization setup. So do we want to default that? And if not, on another tab up here, appraisal text, we would fill out what specific appraisal text we want to show up for this appraisal form.
So what happens if we go through all this, people have gone out and they're filling out their forms and we have a oops? So we go back in here and we unclick something. Does it automatically change all the current forms that it impacts, or do we have to create a whole new form to get that new whatever we just changed?
So you can see my form is grayed out here. I can't make any updates to it. That's because there are appraisals already out there. So we've already assigned this appraisal. So I cannot make changes to this until I delete all the appraisals, make a change, and then reassign them or recreate them out there. So you want to make sure you don't have those oopses.
We can just go into limb and make just populate. So that's just a change. And propagate.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it easy. We're only going to have one appraisal.
The reason I'm just trying to think about what do we have and how things, versus now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's another reason why I mentioned earlier, every 3 years you're going to create a new form, because even after all these appraisals are finalized and done, it's still, the form has its own date range period and due date, and after they're completed, I still can't edit this form. So that's why you're going to create a new form every time you need to. I always click that and I shouldn't, but every time you need to create a new form, you should, but you can copy the appraisal form. So if you want to have essentially the same thing the next year, maybe make a few tweaks, you can copy the appraisal form. And in this copy box, it's going to ask me like what my new dates are, what's the name of it. So I'm not going to do that, but if I did, it would allow me to make those changes to it here.
So you said we could have attachments with evaluations. So if we wanted to attach their job description once every 3 years, what is the other? The confidentiality form. What else is there?
Or is that the links to across the top? Or is it a combo?
I would like for it to be like an attached form and all that to go electronic to their personnel file with evaluations. So can we have that on there too?
But don't they need a sign off?
Well, that would be the electronic signature. When they do the evaluation, they would go over the, the job description again, and that confidentiality, IST thing, and.
Yeah, so that's the question. So if we have our job description and the manager has if we have our performance review and the manager has attached their job description, and hopefully we might be able to push it out to them, and then they've attached
the confidentiality
which
form,
is a standard form, will all those attachments print out and be saved with that year's performance
it would
review?
go to the electronic file, right, Mandy?
I want it associated with that performance review is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm not sure to answer that, I'm not sure.
Jackie, can you help us with that?
Yes. So, sorry, I wasn't sure if you guys were still asking, but so yes, you can, the attachments are part of that appraisal. It's not going to be saved on the consolidated version, but the attachment kind of like lives with that appraisal form.
Okay,
That's a good answer.
that'll make it easy.
Yeah. So let me ask you that, do we literally have them sign that they got it again, or would that be enough that they could say that they reviewed
It's a
it?
part of the evaluation process.
Yeah, that acknowledgement that they do, so everything attached to that appraisal is part of that one.
That they've done it, we just have to word it right.
Right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so your date and time stamp will
That-
be there.
And then part, yeah.
And it prints at the bottom of the appraisal, as you saw, she showed you the example.
It's print attachment.
On if you did it as a PDF attachment, it shows you at the very end, the date and time stamp.
Oh, no, I saw that, but it's joint, what if somebody doesn't show them? I mean, how do we, we just have to force them to. I mean, it's part of the process.
It'll be part of the process and it'll be attached
stamp
to
or
it,
something.
yeah.
I would make it with the staff, I'd make it a statement, or something in there that they've reviewed and understood it or something.
The only thing I need is an acknowledgement signature, and if it's date stamped and it says that, then that'll work.
Yeah.
Right, Polly, when we sit with the surveyors.
All right, and the last couple of things I just want to show you, so we have that appraisal text we could put in here if we didn't use the organization appraisal text. There's also email automation that's now specific to the appraisal form. It used to just live at the organization level, and there was a lot of complaints to Infor about that, so they've now put it at the form level, so you can override whatever's at the organization. And then the form sections is where you actually specify what is the makeup of your appraisal form. So I'll take us to the form section creation section in a minute, but this is where you attach those sections to the form and specify what order they appear in, and then who can fill them out. Can the manager, self, and other rater fill out every single one of them, or just a selection? And then just back under the appraisal form header, the sections are also stored under the appraisal forms, and sections can be used on multiple forms. So if you, like this one resource section, I use that on all the forms in this system. So it can be reused on multiple forms. The only problem is, this is another like little gotcha that you have to watch out for. When a section is attached to a form, it cannot be edited. So if you have generated your form and pushed it out to the employees and you want to edit a section, you have to delete the appraisal, remove the section from the form, and then edit the section, and then attach the section back to the form, and then create the appraisal for the person. So just something to look out for. If you want to edit a section for a future form, I would just copy the section and make a new version of it. But let me go back just a second here. Should have clicked back like 4 minutes ago to get us started on that. But there are different types of sections you can create, and I'll show you. I have a snapshot of that in my PowerPoint here, and I'll show you here in the system. The resource section is just one of the sections. There's criteria sections that you can create where you specify what the actual criteria is for the performance appraisal. There's also the goals section. That's the current goal and the future goals sections, what else is there? There's a third-party results section. So if you're bringing in rating criteria from a different system, that's available to you. There's an activities section. Pulse and check-in and rave, these are brand new. This is brand new functionality that Infor has created, kind of in line with that continuous performance appraisal model. So these, I actually haven't used these yet, but they're supposed to help with continuous performance. And then a summary section, this is where, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Brenda again. So whenever the manager, when it's time for the evaluation, is that the time they assign the person that's going to do the evaluation? A good example is, I'll use nursing. Well, other departments that are open 24/7. So if it's a night shift employee and they want the night shift resource nurse to complete the evaluation, when do they assign that person?
Does it have to be at the very beginning of the year, or can it be like?
It changes. So
Yeah, can it be before they actually do the evaluation?
The appraisal gets assigned to a manager at the time that the appraisal is created, and whoever the employee's manager is at that moment is who gets the appraisal.
Okay. But if the manager wants the resource nurse to give input, does she have to assign that resource nurse as an alternate at the very beginning, or can she wait till closer into the performance evaluation time? The only reason is because people change in that role so much.
Right. Yeah, she just has to do that before she finishes her manager appraisal.
Okay. So like when she schedules them or something like that, we just have to make.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
And yeah, those are all the sections, and I believe that is it for what I wanted to show you. So do you all have any questions? Does it seem like we didn't discuss any part of it, or what are your thoughts?
Did you get enough from goals, Jennifer?
Mm-hmm. Did you get enough from goals?
Mm-hmm. So do you have
What are your
questions about
questions?
goals? Because we did seem to do more for performance as opposed to goals, and I know that that's what you all are really looking at right now.
Yeah, can we go back to goals just for a couple minutes? Because goals is the initial request for like 300 leaders, because we're looking to get away from our current tools.
And you hit it right there, Jennifer, for the leaders.
Yeah, it's only leaders.
That's the leaders right now that we would want to roll.
Not the employees.
Not the employees.
We need to do the employees, but not right now. That's a lot more work. Yeah.
That's like 5 years down the road.
No. It's like by the end of 2020, because that 3-year will kick in, that'll take a while to do. So just to understand goals, we have organizational goals that we can push out to leaders. We have goals. We have goal leaders who can specify goals for a certain category. So like Susan Dees, our CNO, could be a goal leader and push out patient satisfaction goals to everybody in her. Okay. We would create this so that leaders can create some of their own goals, or they can have goals push out to them. If it's an organizational goal, can we push results down to everybody assigned to that goal? How would we do that? How would we push results out?
Yeah, that's from that push results and details section or action that I mentioned before. Let me go to that.
Can we see it? Yeah.
So can't we have?
I want to see an action. I want to see some data and then show me where it goes to.
But can't we have like departmental goals that would fall back to the manager, and then verbally the manager can say, Jennifer, our patient satisfaction goal is this, but you as the employee will not have to go in and put anything. It's a departmental goal that reports up to the manager.
Oh, when we get there, yeah. But right now, I'm just thinking leaders. So all the leaders get their goals. But let's think our turnover goal. Let's say there was a turnover goal for the entire organization had a turnover goal. So we'd have to decide how do we push results for that turnover goal? Are we going to push it at a department level, because each of them has to own it? Are we gonna say, nope, every senior leader's gonna own the same results? And they have to figure out, I mean, we'd have to, but we like to be able to push some results out, because then we're not arguing about the math.
I like departmental goals as far as turnover, because we can't be responsible for other departments.
But the senior leaders can have a organizational turn, like they have shared organizational goals.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it says, okay, so when we update goals, like decrease the turnover, then that updates it for everybody who has that goal.
Yes, exactly. The goal, well, until you do the push results and push details, it doesn't. But once you do that, it's not like you can, at least as delivered, we could maybe figure out a way to conditionally update. But yes, when you do the push results and push details, it hits everybody that has that goal.
Okay. And administrators could do that, or goal leaders could do that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then can we assign, like for goal leaders, can an executive assign a delegate to update goals?
Yeah, I believe we would either give them that goal leader access, or we could maybe use the proxy functionality.
Okay. Because we do have some leaders that delegate their administrative assistants or something like that to update goals.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if we'd want him to be a goal leader, but we just want him to be able to update. Because I don't want him to be able to necessarily go out there and create anything new. I just, not that they would, but I prefer
that
they
might be,
not break anything.
Right. That we would probably have to create a custom security role for them to use that would be based off that goal leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how it works now is they can only update, they're assigned to a goal to update, and that's all they can do. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
So who would be responsible for building this for the health system, the goals and all? You? Okay. Okay. All right. So
wave at Polly too.
And I know she does that.
No, I said wave at Polly too.
Yeah, wake up, no.
Yeah. But we would need to get a much larger group together to do the performance evaluation once we had a better understanding.
Well, Mandy and Ruby would lead that.
But we can't
from other ones.
Yeah, but we can't do that.
For building that, right? Is that what you?
But that we can't just. That's not an HR in isolation build.
No,
you got two groups.
No.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in goals that you guys want to see or have questions about?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is, I think my biggest concern is we'd want to play around with is the rating scale, because that has been our number problem and our number one complaint, and probably biggest dissatisfier with people not using the system. And Polly and I have spent hours. So we'll try this. Propagate it and see what happens. Oh, that looks right now.
She's showing me some of the ratings.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think
this
is where we want to have input. Polly, we would get input from senior leaders and people who've used the system about how do we do this.
Absolutely. And just real quick, so you would create the rating scale up here, and then you specify the levels and whether you want to use it for goals or whatever. And then the rating levels for each appear lower, and you get to define the label and then also what that score actually is. So the range from 0 to, in this case, 1.25, 1.26 to 2.5 is, the next level up. And everything ultimately, I believe, has to equal 5. So whatever the range is between 0 and 5, even if it's not a 5-point rating scale.
Okay. I think that's where we'd want to play with, because we'd want to take some.
This individual,
No, this is it's a good question. So is the rating scale that we determine here system-wide for all goals, or is it per goal type?
That's a good question, and that I think I did not show you that earlier, but it's by goal type.
Oh, that's nice.
Let me.
That's good.
So your rating's supposed to be different. based
Yeah,
on
which
goals.
is part of our problem now, is not different. That would be a big satisfier.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just double check that it's type and not category. So yeah, I think I took you here, but I didn't open one of these up and actually show it to you. It's my fault. So yep, you choose whether the type is even rated, and then you choose the rating scale that you want to use for it.
So is
That
it
should,
rating
it sounds
scale
like
is,
that might help you guys.
yeah, so to say it again, so rating scale is by type?
Yes, by type.
Okay, so tell me what type is again?
So type is you define it. You define what the types are, and it's just a way to group or categorize goals, essentially. It works in conjunction, but also kind of independently from goal categories. Those are your two options for creating, I hate to use the word category again, but categories around what your goals are.
Okay, so like we could have a goal type as finance. So
Sure.
finance could set what was the rating scale for any financial goal. We could have a goal type by patient experience. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So if I did that, then tell me, what's the difference for goal category then? I think I got confused about this I was watching the YouTube video thing.
Sure, yeah. So both of them are user defined. So you would specify what your types and your categories are. Category is not required as delivered, and it doesn't have the same amount of control on it. You can specify a person responsible, kind of like that goal leader functionality. And that's pretty much it, right? Like that's all that the goal category does. The only other thing that you need to look out for under goal categories is the goal category has to be the same if you are aligning two goals. So if I have a category of budget and I try to attach another goal to it, that goal also has to have a category of budget on it. If you remember, that bit me earlier when I was trying to show you all, trying to align the goal. Yeah, so that's the only other piece that you have to keep in mind with goal categories.
And that's how we did, yeah. That's what I'm thinking, our categories are the pillars. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So what impact are the decisions we make in goals on the performance section?
That brings us back to goal types. And if the system will cooperate, I'll jump back into performance here in a second. But so you specify the goal types that you want to use. And then under performance, under performance, by the section, you specify which goal types are in your section. So if you never want, what was your example, finance? If you never want finance goals to be evaluated under the performance appraisal, you just wouldn't put that type in the goals section.
Okay. So does the performance appraisal have, so they can choose goal, they set up goal types too? Or goal types only in the goal section?
So goal types are created and defined in the goals module, but they're referenced in the appraisal module. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I just didn't want, I was just not asking it very eloquently, that there was going to be no conflicts created by some setup that we did in goals that we really wanted in goals, and then what happens and they don't like it in performance. But they shouldn't.
Sure.
They should. Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of control that with this, and hopefully it'll load and I can actually show you. But if you're good with that, we can move on to any other questions.
Good. Okay, so I got goal types and goal categories. I think that'll be a big win. We just need to look at our goals. We already know what they're going to be. Sanitation expense, the big buckets.
And like I said, I will give you this PowerPoint, and it should have some.
Yeah, if you could make sure that, that it's in there, because that's what we'll use as kind of a reference as we gather information.
Sure. Yeah. So you're saying make sure that the type and category distinction is in there.
Yeah. Screenshots and samples would be nice.
Yeah, I didn't want to walk through this whole thing with you guys. I wanted you to actually see the system, but then I will give you this so you have it. Just making sure it's not in here somewhere. No, I'll fill out that slide. Anything else?
Hi, everyone. This is Tanya. Jackie, I had a quick question. So from my understanding, every employee would need license to this module?
It's not a license piece. You all should own the module, and then it's just usable for you.
Okay, so we don't have to have a license for each one. Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Jennifer, did you want Jackie to touch on, because I assume what your needs are, you said reports.
Oh, yeah. So what about reports?
They're not
because
great.
One of our problems, yeah. Yeah.
I will show you what is there. Come on. So a lot of the reports, so goal status, for example, you remember in the very beginning when we created a goal, there was a goal status for on track, or like on schedule, behind schedule, and completed maybe. Or okay, here we go. Submitted, active, past due, completed. Of course, I don't have any data in here to show you. Completed, on hold. This shows goals by status, essentially. Then there's another delivered report for goal progress.
And is this pushed, can this be pushed out by executive?
So you're kind of envisioning like a dashboard where the executive would see, yes. And I'm trying to think if we can definitely make that happen. I'm trying to think if it's delivered like that, or if we would have to create them a dashboard. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think the goal leader, do I have a goal leader? The goal leader might get a nice dashboard, and we could probably steal some of the logic from that and have it out there for the executives.
So maybe that's something that, I don't know if it's in that PowerPoint to show us samples of reports, what they might look like in a dashboard, because we don't want to have to send it to them. We'd like them to be able to just go get it whenever they need it.
Okay.
And like the goal alignment reports, does that tell you what goals are aligned to each category?
Yes.
Okay.
We probably don't have anything in here either, but I can click on here and see. But yeah, it would tell you what reports are, or I'm sorry, what goals are aligned with what organizational goals.
Yeah. So if you could, y'all got to have like demo reports or something like that. If that could be something you could send us, sample reports, is what they might look like. Right. Yeah.
I can see what we have. This is our demo system, and you can see we don't have anything in here, but I can see if anyone else has maybe a screenshot they could provide.
I take it reporting's not strong then?
It's not. In this module, honestly, it's not. It's not the exciting, pretty reports that maybe like a burst would offer. So it's a lot of it's like these list views. But to be completely honest, and then from the performance perspective, it's basically that like performance maintenance piece that where I was showing you the different statuses, a lot of list views.
Mhm. What about the, so this is for goals, what about reports for performance appraisals? Is it the same thing? Because really that, I mean, they want to see goal progress, but on you know, if we've got, say, directors, you got to manage and constantly look at what reports, what goals are due, what performance appraisals are due, what are not, they're going to need some kind of dashboard to go to. So they can follow up with their managers about doing them.
Yeah.
Right, that's that performance maintenance section that I was just saying was like kind of just the statuses that are out there. It's not there's not a lot of reporting there either, essentially. So they see this list, they see the status that it's in. The manager, if you remember, the manager can see like a list of all the statuses that their managers have their appraisals in, and that the employee appraisal is in. So it's not super strong, but.
Can I export that to Excel?
That was my question.
Yes.
You should.
Okay, it looks like it. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I think reports is something that we, you know, obviously we need to figure out what that looks like, and is there a way at the goals level to, I don't want to customize anything, but is there a way to kind of make those a little bit more robust or
Yeah,
something?
you want some dashboard views.
Yeah, quick and simple.
Yeah, generally what we would do is try to understand what your reporting needs are, and then figure out how we would either use Configuration Console or another tool to get you those reports.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of that should come out in the assessment,
Mm-hmm.
you know. They would really, I'm sure, like to know what you all want to achieve, what the true needs are.
Yeah.
What you want to see.
Exactly.
Well, we don't have a sample, so we'd have to create one.
Yeah.
But you know,
We just know what we
you
don't
want.
like.
You know what you want, you know what the.
Yeah, we know what we want.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I think
Y'all have anything else?
Are we good?
good for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.